I can't think of a better way to continue than with our executive leadership panel. And this is truly what WOCAN is all about: representation, empowerment, rewriting the narrative in automotive. These women are leaders, disruptors, change agents. They've broken through ceilings that were never designed with them in mind. They've turned being the only one in the room into an opportunity to change the culture of the room. And this moment is especially meaningful because two of the women on stage, Carrie Wise and Patrice Binks, are co-founders of WOCAN. Their vision is a big part of the reason we're all here today, and it's such a full circle moment to have them on this panel. So I'd like to introduce them. First up, I'm going to introduce you to Carrie Wise, Chief Marketing Officer at LaunchLinks. Carrie is a marketing powerhouse, a trailblazer, one of Automotive News's top 100 leading women 2 times. And she's not only transforming how tech and strategy intersect in automotive, but also opening doors for women and people of color. Next up, we have Marita Hudson-Thomas, Chief Communication Officer at Cars Commerce. With over 20 years of experience in communications and PR, she's worked at household names like Orbitz and Vivid Seats, and is now shaping the voice of a publicly traded leader in automotive tech. Third, I'd like to introduce Patrice Binks, founder of Girls Auto Clinic. Patrice built her own table when one wasn't offered and created a space that empowers women as customers, technicians, and leaders in automotive. And last but definitely not least, Janelle Ross, president of Bob Ross Auto Group. Continuing her family's legacy of excellence while also being one of the very few Black women dealers in the nation. She's also an Automotive News top 100 leading women. Janelle has consistently used her platform to lift others while paving her own path. So ladies, I'm gonna get into it, but before I do, let's just give them a round of applause. I mean, look at this panel. So when thinking through this panel, some of the questions that we wanted to discuss is, let's kind of get outside of our comfort zone, right? We've been on leadership panels before. We know some of maybe, the questions that normally come when we're talking about leadership and growth, but I want to get us a little uncomfortable. So I'm going to start maybe a little easy. Let's see how this goes. But, as women in leadership, people often only see the highlight reel. The title, the success, the recognition, but they don't see the iceberg beneath the water, the blood, sweat, tears that got you here. So my first question is, have you had a real struggle as a leader, and how did you overcome it? We'll start with Janelle.
Okay. Good afternoon again. Over the last Wow, there's been so many struggles. It's hard to really define them. I think the biggest one is, to Ashley's point, there's still very few women of color, specifically African American women, that are automobile dealers. So even though I've been a dealer almost 30 years, I can still walk into a room and be questioned on why I'm in the room. And I think one thing that along the way that I've really had to think deep inside is just providing those people that don't think that I have to look like them to do what they do, and providing them an educational opportunity for them to learn and grow, that I don't have to look like you to be as successful as you, or maybe even more successful than you. So I say that because there's a lot of spaces that I could be easily have deterred in my earlier years. Being 27 and an African American female as an auto dealer, in today's world would not be fun, and obviously almost 30 years ago it was not fun. But I had a job to do and wanted to make sure that I continued my father's legacy. And there's always some good people with the bad that provide you that opportunity and balance and assistance to give you the nudge of keep going. So one thing to always remember, there's always going to be those that doubt you, that don't want to see you succeed. It's a little harder sometimes when it's of your own race or gender. But just know that there are really good people out there that can help advocate for you and find those mentors. So I would say it's not a one-issue, one-time situation. It's been a continuous, evolving, growing opportunity, even for me personally, but feeling that I'm allowing others to understand that there are differences in our world and we can still be successful.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Like,
So just piggybacking off of that, right? Like, it's going to be a struggle, especially if you're a leader. Like, you don't become a leader unless you learn how to struggle, because as a leader, what you're doing is helping other people, right? And coaching and mentoring others. And if you haven't struggled or gone through struggle, right, you're not going to be able to help people in those ways. So leaders struggle. We struggle a lot. And one of the things that I have always said to myself in these struggles, because you're going to struggle with people, you're going to struggle alone, is that, I believe that my Business Girls Auto Clinic can only rise as good as of a leader I can be. And so these struggles are there to help me become a better leader, to help my business get better. Looking at struggles, sometimes I look at them not always as like obstacles, but opportunities to get better, right? To bust through it, go around it, go over it. And, Stacy talks about fear, right? And a lot of our struggles come from fears and just facing, knowing that there's going to be struggles, knowing that you're going to be strong enough, knowing that it's going to help you grow, it's going to help you get the skills that you need to become the leader, to become that business owner. And you're going to look back and be like, wow. And then you see struggle and you're like, bring it on. It's not as bad, right? Life doesn't get easier, you get better. Yeah, so I now I'm still going to complain a little bit about the struggle, but I know that I can take it. Brene Brown talks about being in the arena, fighting the lion. That's what the struggle is. And now I'm not afraid to face it and fight the lion. I'm like, this is going to be a fight. This is going to be a struggle, but I can do it.
yeah. Marita, Chief Communication Officer, automotive, you worked outside of the industry as well. I can imagine there's been some challenges there.
Yeah, there are lots of, I would say, struggles, but I would say in my career, the good times have outweighed the bad for sure. And you're going to have that. But what I see sometimes still today is just being underestimated, right? And so coming in a room to prove your worth, but you prove it to yourself first, right? I don't live this life for someone else. I live it for me, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say being underestimated, but it's all a state of mind. I work every day to do my best and bring my best in. And so the struggles, the good is just outweighing the bad for me. And so I wanted to put a positive spin on that. And one thing I'll tell you all, one of my mentees said to me when I got promoted to Chief Comm Officer at Cars Commerce in 2020, and they were kind of going through my bio, she's like, man, you've been doing this for 23 years? I'm like, yeah, it took me 23 years to get here. So it's a lot of hard work, but man, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Carrie?
I could have said the exact same thing. I think it's definitely isolating being a woman of color, particularly at an executive level. I think the saying is like it's lonely at the top. I think we've all heard that. I feel like my career was smooth sailing until I got to more of a leadership position. And then you get behind the curtain and you start to realize like, oh, there's a corporate game going on here. This ladder just doesn't go straight up. It's not about just working hard and someone's just gonna recognize it. And there's not that many positions at the top. And so I would say I had the most backstabbing, I felt the most vulnerable to kind of the boys club at the very top. And you feel alone because when someone does, there was a particular executive that was after me for years. After me in terms of comments, in terms of like backstabbing and all of that. And I mentioned that on a WOCAN session, and people were like shocked at that because they always saw me out in front of the company speaking and thinking, wow, she must have it really easy. Meanwhile, I was trying to save my life with this particular executive who had a lot of power. And I think those are that's the tax that we we pay sometimes, is that we're smiling and we're doing all the things that look glamorous, but inside I'm really trying to just like navigate getting killed by this particular executive, and he's a part of that boys club that has a lot of support. There's no one to turn to necessarily. HR, I'm not going to HR because they sometimes are supporting, right? They're working for the company. And so I think to me that was my struggle, is just kind of feeling alone and just trying to figure out how to navigate this world.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for being so open. I think it's powerful for everyone in the room to understand, right, the whole story and not just the wins, what we see, what happens when you're on stage. So we know there are still unique barriers that keep women of color moving into leadership. From your perspective, what are one or two of the biggest barriers, and how do we start breaking them? So let's start with Carrie. We'll work the opposite way.
Okay. I mean, outside of the system kind of working against us, not only as women, but women of color, I think there are a lot of challenges, as I mentioned, in kind of navigating the system where you're the only one. And so there's not a lot of power necessarily in your favor. But I would say I focus more on what's keeping us back that we can control. And when I mentor a lot of women over the years. What I find is that the messages that they were sent on what it takes to move up the ladder don't always pan out. You know, when I'm at a session and I hear, you know, take your seat at the table. It's like, that frightens me sometimes, because I'm thinking one of you is going to go back to your corporate office and demand your seat at the table, and you're going to be unemployed. And I hate to say that, but it's the reality of that is good advice, but we got to get tactical on how you actually do that. Because if you go into your work and you're not performing, you're average, you might get fired. And so what I would say is a lot of times we have to realize the rules. And I'll be honest, we have to perform better than the average. When people say, how have you navigated up the ladder? You know what I say? I just never tripped and fell. It's sad. I can't trip. Because if I trip, they have something on me. I got to perform better. And we also have to understand the rules, the corporate rules, and how things, and they change on you as soon as you figure them out. So staying on top of that, and I hate to say it, it's a game. It's a game, and we have to play that game while also being true to ourselves. And I think that is what kind of stops us, is that we think we're just going to come to our work and just bring our best work and think that that's enough, and unfortunately it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say really the biggest barrier is exposure, right? So, you know, I have a daughter. I have two daughters, but I have a sophomore in high school and I have a daughter who's a senior in high school. And shout out to any of the parents who have been through the college application session. I'm just trying to keep my life through it, right? But there is no world where my daughter doesn't think that she will go to college and that she will land well, right? And that she will be a neurologist. Like, there's no world that she doesn't think that, because she's had parents and she's been exposed to this lifestyle, right? So it's the same thing in corporate. It really is about exposure. And I would say, you know, the exposure that gets you in the room, but what are the stretch projects to get you exposure, right? So I think that lots of times the barrier is that there's no exposure to the room and the conversations in the room. Sometimes being overlooked for those stretch projects that are going to get you in the room. And so the breakthrough is, again, each one teach one, each one take someone's hand and expose them, right? Yeah. Expose them to the conversation. And so I try to do that with my mentees at Cars Commerce, just like exposing them to the higher level conversations so that they understand the level that they have to be at to get there. So that's me. Exposure.
Exposure, I like it.
I think the biggest barrier that you'll see with women of color is that we'll never you feel like you'll never be good enough. The goalpost will always be moved. You can be the best. You can be the one, the only. They could be seeking you out and telling you all these wonderful things, but it feels like they'll never want you to be better than them. As soon as you start performing well, right? There's going to now start to be issues. I mean, and look at Stacey Abrams. She is the best. She is the one. She is the only. They were supporting her on the smaller scale, but as soon as she's like, I want to be governor, it's no. And so it's kind of, that can be very discouraging and shocking. And it's a huge barrier because you feel like you can only get to a certain point, right? And how do we bust through those barriers where we're not asking for permission or we need, their help to get to that level where they're like, you're not going to be up here. Yeah. And so it's finding, people that are going to support us, that are going to give you the money and the resources that you need when you feel those other people that were supporting you and cheering and bringing you up to a certain level where they can feel good about themselves. They're like, look at our DEI person here, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you ask for everything that you're owed and you ask for more because you know you deserve it and you belong here, you deserve it, they're going to say no, right? Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers where we only reach a certain, glass ceiling and then that's it. It's like, what, so I'm dealing with that. I'm sure we all still dealing with those types of problems.
So I would say, piggybacking on what Marita said about exposure is access. And there are a lot of women of color that have talent in our industry, but do they have the right access? And that's where, looking back over 35 years ago when I got into the business seriously. I say seriously because I had the opportunity to be in a dealership family since the time I was 4. So I always knew I wanted to be in the business, but my father unexpectedly passed at a very young age of 62, and that's what thrust me into the leadership role. But one thing that I didn't have that is so awesome to see today, and my mother is looking from above, excited to see this room. Mm-hmm. Because there wasn't a WOCAN, there wasn't the access to talk to other women who are rising to be an auto dealer, rising in the corporate side of things that we can have we got similar struggles, similar opportunities, but you just didn't have those people to talk to. So my thing is access, and a lot of times we need to get out of our own comfort zones to network, to really facilitate what that access can look like. And it's so important, and it can happen in a very granular way, but it's something that is very necessary for us all to continue. I mean, even though I've been in the game, there's a lot of people in this room that I don't know, but there's a lot of people in this room that may be something that we can have in common, or what I need, or what you need, or however we can help. And I really think, and that's where the barriers need to begin to go down, because you do have WOCAN. You have a huge network of women, like-minded women, who are looking at women in the auto industry of moving forward. We have all been in spaces with other women. I'm gonna take the guys out, because I'll be very honest, sometimes I'd rather be in a room full of men. I mean, I'm just saying, it's not always pleasant, but this should be the space to feel comfortable, to state your fears, to state your failures, because everyone in this room has failed. We haven't all been successful. Marita and I had dinner last night. I can pick up things from her from a corporate perspective that is not happening to me in retail. But that's where we really have to open ourselves up. And I know it's hard, but you got to find some of those advocates to really help with that access and helping you move forward.
Yeah, and I think representation is another one, and I feel really, really, really blessed because my C-suite mate, Angelique Strong-Marks, she's our chief legal officer, and she is that sounding board for me. Mm-hmm. And it gives me, look, I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. Me and Angelique argue about 4 times a week. I swear, it's true. And I say, Ange, we're saying the same thing. She said, we're not. And I'm like, we are. But, we have something where she's actually telling me the truth, and I'm actually telling her the truth. And you need that. You need those people. Janelle Ross, she's on our CAR's board. So it feels really good to walk into a board meeting and she's there, and our corporate secretary is Angelique. And so it feels really good. And then we have Jerry DeVard, who another powerful marketing powerhouse on our board. So representation is really important. Even, still for me, you sit in a C-suite. I learned from Angelique, and we have 67% of women on our C-suite. So
Wow,
I'm learning from
yeah.
them, 67%. On our C-suite are women. So I'm learning from them every day. So that representation is really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. As a woman in retail for 15 years, for 10 years of that, for me, I didn't have women to look up. It was so isolated, to y'all's point, and so it's so powerful to see that where we are today and to have that community to give us the honest truth, right? Like sometimes you need to hear like, why isn't this working? Why am I not getting promoted? And what do I need to do to get there?
Ashley, just on that point, and I'm curious, how many in the audience have ever had a woman boss? Just raise your hand. Okay, a lot. Wow, a lot. Because I went for maybe decades, not having a woman boss, or very few. And so, like, to your point, having a boss that's a woman, or having another woman, I always point to Gio, we've been on leadership teams together, and it really only takes one outlet. It's not like you have to have the whole C-suite be women, but just having that one, it changes everything.
Yeah, it's so true. I appreciate just the honest, truths, right? Because it isn't just about our individual efforts, it's systems, it's access, it's support. Which kind of brings us to the next question, and y'all kind of touched on it a little bit, and we read the books, we hear about it, and, there's that saying of, get a seat at the table. You need a seat at the table. But there really is a difference between having a seat at the table and having a voice at the table. So how have you made sure, how can we help make sure that, our voice is not only heard, but it's also respected and taken seriously?
I'd like to take this one. I'm really passionate about this one. So, I've been in the meetings, right, where you're trying to get a word in, and you just can't get in the conversation. I don't know what you are like. It really hurts me in relationships because I end up just like jumping in. I'm so used to working in male-dominated spaces where, in order to get my voice in, I gotta talk over someone and jump in, right? Or the mansplaining, right? Where I know something better than everyone in the room, and this guy's like, "Let me teach you, Carrie, about something you already know," right? It's pretty frustrating. I think for me, it's being strategic. And so one of the things I really have done is if I have a big idea and I'm bringing it to a meeting, with executives, a lot of times I'm like a politician where I'm already meeting with all the executives in that room, one-on-one, before I even present the idea. See, my idea is going to get approved. I'm not even going to go in the meeting without knowing it's going to get buy-in. So I'm meeting with all of the executives. And if they disagree, then I can work that out. And I'm usually getting someone also who's very powerful in the room. It's usually a guy that I need his opinion. He needs to agree with it the most. And then when I present the idea, now I already know I'm going to have endorsement. I'm looking at John over there and saying, "John, come on, back me up." And so I think a lot of us think we just come with the ideas, but no, it's a lot like politics. Like, these people have already talked before there's ever a vote. And that's my way of getting my ideas in.
See, this is why Carrie and I get along. This is exactly what I do.
You do the same thing?
I do the same thing.
Wow.
I call it lobbying. I said it in an executive team meeting. I was like, I'm like a lobbyist, okay? you go and because the important thing to understand is that everybody wants to know how something is going to benefit them, their team, right? Their goals, right? And so you can't have that conversation in a big room because what starts to happen is one person says something and it gets doubt in everybody else's mind, and then it's like, well, no, we don't like it, and no, right? So you go individually to each person before the meeting, right? And you get the buy-in. It's just like lobbying. And when you get to that room, it's already decided. I remember one time, Alex, our CEO, he goes, "Oh, you all already talked." Yep. and it's decided and everybody's good. So we're good? Okay, cool. And it's a more efficient way of working too, because you're just gonna keep having circular conversations in a room. So, yep, same thing. Exact same thing, yeah.
That's from two sweet C-suite.
I literally
women, by
thought
the way.
I was the only one doing this.
I've been doing this since the 90s.
I would say from the retail side, even as an owner, and I do have a general manager, and I have 13 managers beneath him. You have to have that buy-in, and even though I may have the idea, and I may decide that I'm going to do it anyway, but I'm not the one that has to execute. I'm not the one on the floor. I'm not the one in the service lane. I'm not the one in the parts department. I'm not the one in the accounting office. So I take the approach of, to your point, of going individually because they are my team. And when people ask me where I work, I say I work at the Bob Ross Auto Group. And people are like, "Really? That's what you just said?" I said, "Well, I do work there." It doesn't benefit me to say I'm the owner of the company if I don't have a team surrounding me to do what we need to do on a daily basis to represent the brands that we do. So I do in a fashion similar to that and go to them, and then everyone has their little caucus, and then somebody who doesn't realize that I've already had this conversation, they're like, "Hey, I really think we should do." I was like, "For real? Well, why don't you bring that up in the next managers meeting?" And they're like, "Okay." And then they're all sitting there like, "Well, I wanted to bring it up." We're all in it, all in agreement. So I mean, for me, it's all about teamwork. It's not I, it's us. And that's just the way I approach, my team. I'm sorry, our team, our team, and it works for me. So
I think it's kind of important to also, just because you have a seat at the table doesn't mean you have a voice yet, right? Sometimes the first step is getting the seat, understanding the people there, what their needs are, and you're there at the table for a reason. You probably have a unique perspective or something that they value, and so it's understanding how you can bring your unique perspective, what you know, your own curiosities, your own experiences to the table to help, solve these problems, right, of why you're here. And so it is intimately, before you have the voice, just because you have that seat doesn't necessarily mean you should be speaking. It's kind of learning a little bit about these people who are at the table, what motivates them, right? What their needs are, and how you can contribute to that. Once you understand that and say, how can I use my own individual experiences and the reason they have me here to help with that. So it may be, being a little bit when you get there, learning more before you jump in with a voice.
I think credibility has to be there as well, though. Everyone can have an idea, but the question is, are you someone who executes? And it doesn't mean executes on a big level. It could be whatever piece you own. But I have a hard time, even as a leader, taking ideas from someone who hasn't executed. I have a hard time taking ideas from someone who doesn't give me the business case or hasn't done the research on the idea. And even I've been frustrated. I've shared ideas to a leader and just expected to have credibility, and they're kind of like, show me the numbers or give me the backup. And so I think just doing our homework and really putting together an argument on why this is a good thing and what's in it. I think someone said, what's in it for your leader? There has to be something in it for your leader, or they're not going to necessarily buy in.
Yeah.
I think results. You have to learn how to articulate your successes, and it's one of the most important communication skills that you can have, right? Really articulating what you think the result or the impact is going to be. And when you get in the position where you are leading, you have to, I promise you, learn how to articulate your successes and those results in terms of impact to the organization. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And as much as we don't like to say it, like this is a game. Like you do have to learn the rules of the game that you're playing, that you're in, right? And sometimes that means that you don't always have to have a voice or a say in things, right? As well. So, and knowing that role of when you speak up, when you don't, right? Understanding the game that you're playing. Is it a long-term game? Because then there may be times where you don't need to speak up. Yeah, so understanding that too is going to be helpful.
It's so valid because, I was just thinking that in my head, like it's not just having to say something every single time, right? When you say something, you want it to be so profound or meaningful that it's not like, oh, here she goes again, right? So I love this.
We all know those, don't we?
We're recording this, right? So I'm not able to take notes. I want to make sure I can do the replay. So, Carrie, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but when we get advice, right? When we're learning, or maybe we're doing our own education, all of us have been given advice along the way, and sometimes it's just not great advice. So, what's a piece of advice that you were given in your career that turned out not to be right? And what's the better advice you'd give instead? Patrice, do you want to start? Yes. Are you thinking of something?
Well, here's the thing, because you get a lot of advice, especially when you are doing exciting things. People want to come up and talk to you and give you advice. And most advice is bad advice, because people's advice comes from their own experiences and things that have worked for them, and that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So you can follow somebody's advice that made them successful, and it won't work for you. And it's not that it's bad advice, it's just that it's based on kind of their experiences and what they're doing and the choices they're making at that time. And so any advice that you get, right, you want to take that and see, how does this fit with what I'm doing, what I'm working on? Do I adjust it a little bit for me? And then try it, right? Try it out. You don't have to do something exactly the way somebody's giving you advice to do. Take what makes sense, maybe throw away the rest of the advice. And I get bad advice even from my advisors, right? Like because it's coming from their experiences that they've done, and they may have had a lot of experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean all advice you get, even from really smart people, is going to be good for you. But the good news is you get better at learning who has better advice. You get better at understanding the advice to take in and the advice to throw away. And you do that by taking bad advice and failing from it and being like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? And trusting yourself more, so again, which advice to take, which advice to act on. But, just do it, right? Like, and think about it. Don't, never, ever, follow someone exactly. Even Oprah is my true north, or like Beyonce. Yeah, I'm gonna take advice from Beyonce, but that doesn't mean her advice is gonna work for me. So I asked her for advice for Stacey Abrams today, and I'm gonna take that and figure out how to make it my own, So that's what I would say about advice. I could give you a ton of examples of giving bad advice, but I'll tell you what hurts worse is when you get advice that's good advice and then you don't take it. Yeah. And you do the opposite. I remember those more than the bad advice that I've gotten and I've acted on. The good advice I got that I didn't take hits harder.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple principles out there, just generically, and there's two that come to mind. We hear a lot about working hard, and it was very hard for me to face the fact that working hard won't necessarily get you to the top, though. It's strategic work that gets you to the top, and a lot of times that's a real tough one, because we put in the hours and we're like, why am I not getting promoted? But the question mark is is the work you're doing tied to what the company really cares about? A lot of times we'll be on these pet projects, and I've done it myself. I've had this pet project that I'm so passionate about, but the CEO is not passionate about that. Well, that's a problem. That's a misalignment. And I'm going to be really bitter because I'm off on this path and I'm disconnected from either the revenue of the company or what the company really cares about. And so I think hard work, hours, that doesn't always matter either. Once again, you can put in a lot of hours, but is it strategic work? Is it strategic work? Some of us feel good about our jobs because we're putting in hours, And that makes us feel like we're the most valuable, and then we get mad when someone else like moves up the ladder. And like I said, it comes down to strategy, and that's a hard one. I think at the director level for me, that's where that switch was, where everything that got me to a director was hard work, and then that was the flip where it's like now it has to be strategic. And so I think for me that's one thing that is not necessarily true. The other one is pursuing your passion. How many of you have heard like pursue your passion? If you pursue your passion, you'll never work a day in life, I think is a quote, right? And that is true. That's ultimately what we all want, is to have work that is exactly our passion. But the reality is that's not going to be every stage of your career. My first job at J.D. Power was checking data. That's not what I wanted to do in my career. But I will tell you, if I wouldn't have done that and checked data and done this boring work, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I think sometimes, particularly in the new generation, there's this mindset of just pursuing your passion and doing things that feed you and serve you, when the reality is I've done a lot of crappy jobs, but they were building blocks. I've taken new roles in which I have no experience in because it's going to expand my power, my influence. And so we have to think about, there are going to be seasons that you're not passionate every day, but it's going to get you to a place where you have the freedom then to pursue passion. That's what I want. I want the freedom to pursue passion.
And just to piggyback a little bit off what you said about strategy, right? Like, more important than working hard is the things you're working on, who you're working with is more, that's a strategy, right? Everybody has to work hard, right? So that's the base level. It's where you live, where you're working, who you're working with, and the things that you're working on are going to be more important to your success than working hard.
Yeah, I think the way that we explain it, just in a few words, is impact versus activity, right? Like, that's the way that I talk about it with my team, is the impact. What is the impact? You got a lot of activity. That's cool. Did that change dealer count? No? Okay. Guess what? Right? So yeah, it's impact versus activity. So, +1 on that, and definitely +1 on every step is a building block, right? Every step, every job is a building block. I joke with my team a lot. Jessie hasn't heard it yet because she just hasn't been there long enough. But I said, I'm the best and worst boss you're gonna ever have. I'm the best boss because I've been in your shoes. Every job you all have on this team, I've done it. And I'm the worst boss because every job, I've done it. So I know what's possible and what it takes. So.
And sometimes that's taking a step back. I think it's really hard. You want to climb that ladder, but sometimes we do laterals. Sometimes we take a step back if it positions us to move up. These are hard things. Janelle, I'm sorry, you have the floor now.
I'm listening. No, I mean, you've all said it. I mean, advice is good and bad. And from a retail perspective, for those that are in retail, there's a lot of advice given to your managers that you get from your employees, that I get from our team. And it's like, everyone thinks it's so easy. Like, well, why don't you just do this? Why don't we just do that? Well, why don't we just use this? Why do we not, And I'm like, who's paying the bills? But when you break it down and to have them understand how everything relates to one another, and that's what, then you're having a different conversation. And so then we're all learning, together. But I'm sitting here listening to you, but joking in my head about just the situation we had, internally with somebody on one side of the fence for GM wanting to use this, and then in Mercedes they want to use this, and then they're like, well, this is better than that. And I'm like, well, why? And then they're like, we're going to get back to you when we have a better answer on why we're doing it. And I'm like, yeah, to your point, bring me the credibility, bring me the information. How is that going to move us forward as an organization? So unfortunately, I don't think there's, even bad advice can be turned into good advice because you can learn from it. And so we just have to have, it's a part of it, and it's not going to go away. And I guess the biggest thing is, I thought 30 years ago that the schedule that I had then and this hamster wheel that I was on would stop, and the advice was, oh yeah, you'll get to the point. Yeah, that doesn't happen. So You know, that's the worst advice.
I love it. So I'm just going to close up our questions before we go into a Q&A. So one final question is, I'd like y'all to leave, the women, the attendees in this room, with one call to action, one piece of wisdom that they can carry into their leadership journey and take action today when they leave here. What's one call to action that you would leave them with?
I would, Janelle, you sure? Okay, I would say, and I've heard this from a leader, I worked for Chip Perry. He's one of a legend, in the automotive industry, and I worked with him for a number of years. And he always said, you need to be an SOB, a student of the business. And that always stuck with me. And part of that is, like, you've never arrived. There's always something to learn. And I think anybody who thinks, well, I already know it all, you're gonna get passed up. I'm in marketing. Things change all the time. And what I have prided myself on is always learning. And there's no excuse not to learn. Like, you don't need to wait for a scholarship for WOCAN to go to an event or whatever. Like, YouTube alone, I mean, I've learned, ChatGPT, like, there's all these resources. Like, never has there been so many resources available to us to learn in the history, of women navigating this space. And so there's no excuse. So always be learning, and learn from not only people above you, because everyone tries to find the mentor. Can you be my mentor? Because I want to learn from you. No. I learned from Julie, the 24-year-old on my team, right? Because she's the new generation, and she's like, well, that's not it. That's not cool, Carrie, and that's not in. And have you considered TikTok? There's all this stuff that I don't know that she knows. And so remember, we got to learn from those below us, the same level and above us, and people that don't do what we do. I hear that in retail a lot. Well, you haven't sold cars. Don't tell me anything. Like, that is craziness. I learned so much from people who have never actually done my job, but they have transferable advice that works for me. And so let's be open to learn.
Janelle?
I would say don't ever let anyone stop you from doing what you really want to do. Growing up, like I said, I always wanted to be an automobile dealer. I always thought that my dad would be around to really teach me. And fortunately, we had about 4 serious years of working together. And I'll never forget an African-American male general manager who had been a dealer, who was our general manager shortly after he died, said, she'll never make it. That right there alone, gonna let me know I'm gonna make it. So just be mindful that, again, there's not always gonna be those that are on your team that want to see you succeed. So that's why I say find those few. But in terms of this opportunity, there are those in these spaces that want to see you succeed because they know that it just makes sense, that we need all of us to make this industry continue to thrive. And so, don't ever lose sight of your dreams. And I was getting ready to say what Carrie said about education. My mother was an educator, and my dad would always say to me, if you ever think you're going to know everything about this business, you are sadly mistaken, and you've got to have the will and the want to continue learning. And with technology breeds all of that. But use this time not to collect 50 million cards or using Blink or whatever. Don't bring that to me because I don't know how to use it. But take the time, don't get a stack of cards, figure out those 3 or 4 people that are really those people that you want to meet with, and if you don't know them, or use this network or others to get to those people. Because we know what NADA is like, but to have the people in this space and to have access to key leaders is huge. And that's really all I have to say.
Patrice?
So I think we're all probably going to have a lot of the same advice because we're seeing the future head in the same way. And, you say always be learning and, you're kind of like be a student of the business and things. And for me, the word I like to use, or the phrase I like to use is stay curious, right? Like stay curious about things, which is meaning you're learning. But ultimately, it's so funny because we just talked about bad advice and we're all up here. And last question is giving advice. Learn how to sell, learn how to build, right? Those are the two skills, I think, that you'll always have a job. You know, you'll be useful, you'll be able to help, you know, solve people's problems. And so I think those are two skills for the future, especially when we have AI coming in and people are uncertain about their jobs and if they're going to have a job. Those are the two skills that are going to set people apart. Learn how to sell, learn how to build.
Rita.
Girl, you are one of one. That's it. That's it. You're one of one. I think we forget that we are the only one on this earth who is like us, right? And so we bring something unique to every room. So because you're one of one, because there's no one like you, invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, right? And so micro-learning is like the new term, right? I've been doing this, again, since like the 90s also. But take 10 minutes every day. Starting tomorrow morning, take 10 minutes, read. It's what they're saying. Read. Think about the skills that you have, that God's given you, right? And invest in yourself, invest in those skills. 10 minutes, that's 70 minutes a week. And I promise you, that 70 is going to turn into 2 hours, 3 hours of investment into learning and investment into yourself. So that's the biggest advice that I can give you, and nobody else is going to do it for you. I think a lot of times people are waiting. You talked about, I'm waiting for the WOCAN scholarship. I'm waiting for this thing. No, it's on you. It's on you. So when that opportunity is at your feet, you're ready. You're ready for it. And if you're not thinking about AI, I'm thinking about it every day. I'm asleep, I'm dreaming about it, right? As a communicator, someone who creates content and things like that, this world is moving fast and it's going to look very different and it's going to impact everyone in this room. So if you need some micro-learning, they got tons of micro-learning courses on AI. You know, I would say, you know, start there.
Yeah,
But,
awesome.
yep.
Thank y'all. So now are y'all ready for this? Because we're going to open it up to the room with their questions. So you have any questions? I see it. Over here and over there. I see it.
Okay, we got a question.
Hi, ladies. Diana Lee.
Pinnacle Award winner, everybody.
Yes, I love it.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of WOCAN and everything that you guys have done. I've been in the auto industry for 30 years. And I want to talk about this because the stats show 98% of businesses are funded to male companies. Only 2% in United States gets funding for women. That includes Black, white, Hispanic, and Asian. That's the USA. 2% in United States get funding for any female-owned businesses. It goes to 17% if you have a male co-founder. But if you're gonna go at it alone, it remains 2%. There are 17,500 US franchises here in America, new car franchises. 2% is funded for all minority dealerships. It's about 350, that's it. And that includes the men. Those are the real numbers. 350 dealerships in the United States, approximately, are owned by minorities. The other part, which is hugely, 17,500 minus the 2%, 350, is owned by non-minorities in America. So what are we talking about? We're talking about if we all share 2%, you can't own a business, ladies. you don't have a shot. You don't. That's the truth. Because out of the 2% of female-owned businesses, I guarantee the minorities are going to have 0.5% of that. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I would definitely tell all of you guys, you need to have financial power before you have social power, before you have political power to change the world. Without financial power, you can't change the world. That's the reality. And we sit here and we're like Little Red Riding Hood doing whatever that we're told, thinking that you're gonna move up. You're not. And we can't feel bad. If you gotta be a bitch, be a bitch. That's the truth. Be a bitch. Who cares? Because we only have 0.5%. If you can't knock down doors, we won't even get 5.5%. And so my question to you ladies, beautiful ladies out there, how do you prevent yourself from feeling bad on the decisions that you have to make?
Who wants to take that one? Hey, can I add a stat to your dealership before one of them answers your question? From a dealership standpoint, I don't know if you guys know, there's only 1,000 to 1,100 of those 17,000 dealers that are owned by women. And if you heard Perry Watson, how many are owned by women of color? Anybody know?
70.
You weren't supposed to answer. You know the answer. 70 of 1,000 dealers are owned by women of color. Now, anybody know why we don't own as many dealers as white women? Legacy. Because if you're a white woman, you're more likely than me to have a dad that was a dealer, because in the 60s, many people of color couldn't even own a dealer. A grandfather, a great-grandfather, a brother, or even a husband, right? You're more connected to the top of the food chain. So when they ask me why we created WOCAN, because there is a difference. So I'm with you in terms of that connection, and connection to the financial power has its benefits, even amongst women. But anybody want to answer that tough one? That's a tough question.
I mean, so for me, it's definitely, it's something I struggle with a lot, especially because I'm the CEO and founder. I don't have any partners. It's kind of just me. And I have to be a bitch, and then I feel bad about it, right? Sometimes I try not to be with employees, but I'm imperfect, right? Like you are working hard, you're under a lot of stress, right? And sometimes you have to bring that out. You have to be direct. You do have to be aggressive. And afterwards, I do feel really bad about it, or should I have made that move? And you're constantly questioning yourself as a woman leader, because I know men that act that way don't get this response that I get, which is, I don't like the way you're talking to me and your tone and this, that I'm like, I've never, ever would think to tell a male boss about his tone towards me. Mm-hmm. They're constantly aggressive and direct. And I want to be that person, but I'm told, no, you're a woman, you can't. People aren't going to respond to you in that way. And it's true. People don't respond to my direct tone sometimes like they would a man. And what helps me work through that is a coach. I have a coach, right? It's kind of, it's therapy and coaching that helps you understand why, you don't feel good standing in your power. I don't think men are like, oh, I felt bad. I was a little bit mean to that person, or I was a little bit too direct. I should do better next time. It's overcoming that stigma, because just as women, we're told to be polite, and we're told to be nice, and we're not aggressive, and we're not loud, and we don't curse. And you can't show emotion, right? And I used to have this mentor, he's a man, he was like, you can't show emotion. You can't show, and I'm like, men show emotion all the time, but it's like the anger emotion, right? Like they don't look at it as emotion. They think emotions are crying and what women do. And so it's understanding, unlearning that stuff about being a woman, and usually coaching and therapy help me with that.
I mean, I would say, we all have to make tough decisions, and because we're human, there is a humanistic side of our business. You know that you're affecting people's lives, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for 100 families, And I'm also responsible for the hundreds or thousands of vehicles that are on the road that we are, repairing or they're purchasing. So we got to make some tough calls. And I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not easy. I had a GM one time that said, "Oh yeah, I like to fire people." I said, "Yeah, I don't think I need you on, that's not the way you need to go about your business of excited about firing people." If there's just tough calls. And I think we anguish over it, and I'm being inclusive and maybe I don't need to do, but I know I anguish over it more than my dad would, because I remember how he would, he would just walk in and be like, "Ashley, you're fired." And I'm like, "Today we got to do we have a file? Have you had a performance review? Have you had the 90-day talk?" I'm like, he just fired people. It wasn't a problem. But now you have to go through so many more steps, even though when you're right, for it to happen. So there are those tough calls. Unfortunately, I think being human, we question ourselves sometimes after those things happen. I'm not talking about if something's very egregious or, from that perspective. But at the end of the day, you are dealing with people. And I've had some of those people return and be like, "Thank you for letting me go. I learned a lot from that experience," and you just never know how things are affecting someone. And sometimes they're relieved because they know they're not performing, but you got to nudge them. So unfortunately, at the end of the day, Patrice and I are the bottom line, and you got to make those tough calls, and it's not everybody's going to be your friend.
Yeah. So I think we have time for one more question. So I know Stephanie has one. Oh, right there.
Good afternoon, everybody. As a founder and CEO of Just Recruiting, some of my challenges, I say that this is, and my co-founder Charles says this is the year of leadership for me. So I say that to say, as a leader, we have our day-to-day responsibilities that pull us in various directions, right? Sometimes in our vision, I have a problem where I think more grandlier in a vision. So how do you all stay abreast when it comes to keeping your vision? And there are times that you have to deviate out of that vision that you initially see as a leader. How do you pivot? How do you change? And what do you do to still keep that vision alive, although it's not what you initially seen in the beginning?
You keep your vision as vague as possible. They talk about what's the goal, right? But leave it open of how you get there, right? Don't be so direct of this is how I'm going to hit this goal. So what is the goal, your vision, your business? What is the end goal of it, right? And then trusting, that the path that you're going to go to get to that end goal will reveal itself as you start taking the steps. You cannot say, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and it doesn't work that way. And it allows you to pivot. It allows you to be adaptable. It allows you to change, but you're still headed to the end. You're still headed to that goal, to that finish line. But how you get there will always change.
Tactically, I would say that most people don't put their plan on paper. And personally, I'm not a vision board person. Like, I see Amanda put a lot of vision boards together, and I'm like, how do you do that? Because I feel like I get distracted. And I can't cut out the magazine and do all the pictures and all that stuff. But like from a work standpoint, no matter what position I've ever been in, when I take a role, I have a plan. Just like a marketing plan. Like, what is our objective? Our objective is to do this. And then what are the tactics we're going to take to get to that objective? And I think it's important to put that on paper. And that can adjust. But a lot of times people have these goals, but they don't actually have a plan and tactics to get there, or they have way too many tactics. Like, there's 30 you can only have 3. There's 3 things you can do well at any given time. So if my job is to generate more leads as a marketer, I'm gonna have 3 key strategies to do that. And then I'm gonna break it down from there, and I'm gonna share it with my team so everybody knows, and we're all like singing from the same song sheet. So the question is, like, have you put a plan on paper? And then to her point, you have to be flexible because stuff happens.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's even
I would
taking
say-
it further than flexible. You have to be elastic because this industry will pull you in 50 million
Yeah.
thousand directions. So you just got to be ready.
Yeah.
Well, stretch me
And
out.
I think what we have to understand, everybody's not going to believe in your vision,
That's true.
and everybody's not going to see your vision, right? And you will get a lot of, well, that's not going to work, and that's not going, right? But they don't have the vision, right? So you, first of all, I think the first thing is believe in your vision. People will, what's that, clock it? Did the kids be doing, clock it? The kids do that, right?
This is where I need a 20-year-old to interpret it for me.
I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
But everybody is not going to believe in the vision. I think flexibility is key. People tend to sometimes quit and stop when they have to change and be flexible.
I'm guilty of
Right? Flexibility will get you everywhere. If you can pivot and change course, that will get you everywhere. I promise you.
That's where the magic is.
You have
Yeah.
to be
That's
flexible.
where the magic is.
That's
Yep.
where the magic is.
Where the magic is. I mean, there's a huge. It's not about the destination. It's the journey, right? That's where the magic happens. So it has to. You have to be open to that changing and flexibility. Yep.
Awesome. Well, this conversation is, it's exactly what WOCAN is all about. And, you know, when women of color lead, we don't just break ceilings. We're building new paths for others to follow. So thank you all for being part of this moment.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the incredible panel.